very good morning, everyone, and welcome to Jamiyah Singapore's Interracial Harmony Seminar. I'm pleased to welcome our guest of honor, Mr. S Iswaran, Minister for Transport and Minister in charge of Trade Relations. Thank you for gracing us with your presence, Minister Iswaran. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here at the Al Malik Faisal Hall at Jamiyah Singapore with esteemed community leaders and faith leaders. We have the pleasure of being in the company of Reverend Sister Teresa Xiao, Executive Director, Canossaville Children and Community Services, Venerable Dr. K. Gunaratna, Advisor, Mahakaruna Buddhist Society, Mr. Tan Tiam Lai, Chairman for Taoist Federation of Singapore, Dato Dr. Muhammad Hasbi Abu Bakar, President for Jamiyah Singapore, His Excellency Haji Zainul Abidin Rashid, Singapore's Ambassador to the State of Kuwait, Mr. Jean-Luc Boutel, Stake President, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, His Excellency Haji Muhammad Alami Musa, Ambassador to Algeria and President for MUIS, Mr. Tay Eng Kiat, General Director for Singapore Soka Association. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here. We are also live streaming to our audience who are joining through Zoom, and we welcome them in joining and participating with us. My name is Nazat Fahima, and I'm the chairperson for Jamiyah Singapore's youth group, and I take pleasure in being the MC for today's important and timely event. Today's seminar is titled, Whither Racial Harmony in Singapore, What More Should Be Done? It's rather intuitive to be asking this question just 4 days before Racial Harmony Day. The 21st of July, 1964, was the day Singapore met with the racial riots. It is a day for us to remember that race and religion are always potential fault lines in our multiracial and multi-religious society. At the same time, it is a day for us to celebrate the racial harmony we have had over 57 years. However, in the recent times, the racist acts by some individuals in public have raised the concerns on our multiracial harmony. Today's seminar, organized by Jamiyah Singapore and supported by People's Association, brings together experts and community leaders who will address this disconcerting trend and offer perspectives to mitigate the issue. I take pleasure in inviting Dr. H.M. Salim, Senior Vice President 1 of Jamiyah Singapore and the coordinator of this Interracial Harmony Seminar, to present the introduction. Dr. Salim, please.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Honorable Minister, Mr. S Iswaran, Minister for Transport and Minister in charge of Trade Relations, Professor Adjunct Dato Dr. Muhammad Hasbi Abu Bakar, President of Jamiyah Singapore, distinguished guests, distinguished panel of speakers at this seminar, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. And good morning to all of you. Today, we are at this seminar to listen to the views from distinguished speakers, including Honorable Minister, on the topic of interracial harmony in Singapore. For 2 reasons, this seminar assumes importance. Firstly, the various disturbing incidents that have occurred in Singapore recent months make us, the harmony activists, community organizers, and academicians, realize that the conversations of race need to move forward productively in this age of social media, where tensions can easily be inflamed. Singapore is culturally diverse society, and in the dynamics among the major cultural and ethnic groups, the topic of race is present in every discussion, every issue, and in every policy formulation. We need then to understand it in our social context, our historical context, and for sustaining lasting peace and harmony in our society. Secondly, Jamiyah Singapore, having the legacy of being the front runner in promoting interracial and interfaith harmony, cannot be a silent spectator at this point of time when the issue is discussed and debated in the open, both in print, visual, and social media from different angles. Sometimes to the extent of questioning whether this narrative of harmony is only skin deep. Therefore, the leadership of Jamiyah has decided to hold this seminar with the participation of concerned individuals who are administrators, social activists, academicians, media personnel, and youth leaders to come together and express their views on this vital topic and give different perspectives for sustaining racial harmony in Singapore, leading to the progress of our nation. Let us celebrate our diversity. Let us recognize that multiculturalism is one of our strengths, and multiracial presence is an opportunity for our nation to draw and pull together our collective strength and resources for our progress as a strong nation. Not to see this as a negative opportunity for dividing and hegemony by any self-interested individuals or groups in Singapore. We are happy that Honorable Minister S Iswaran has joined us to officiate the opening of the seminar and give his views on the theme of the seminar. We have an eminent panel of speakers joining us at this seminar that include Ambassador at Large Ong Keng Yong, Executive Deputy Chairman of RSIS and Director of IDSS, who held several eminent positions in his diplomatic career, including the Secretary General position of ASEAN. Dr. William Wan, General Secretary of Singapore Kindness Movement. Professor Kirpal Singh, an eminent academician, writer, and poet. Ms. Bryna, journalist, columnist, and social media editor of Today. Professor Hussin Mutalib, an academician in political science, researcher, and author, currently with Jamiyah Singapore. And we are expecting Ms. Visu An, the voice of the youth in this seminar, to join at any time now, and she is the president of the NUS Students' Union. Dr. Isa Hussin, Jamiyah's Senior Vice President 3, who himself is an academician, researcher, and trainer, will be moderating the panel. Let us look forward to an engaging seminar this morning. Thank you. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Thank you, Dr. Salim. Thank you for highlighting that racial harmony is an opportunity itself. I now invite Dr. Muhammad Hasbi Abu Bakar, President of Jamiyah Singapore, to welcome the address. Dr. Muhammad Hasbi, please.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Honorable Minister, Mr. S Iswaran, Minister of Transport and Minister in charge of Trade Relations, distinguished panel of speakers at this seminar, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and a very good morning to all of you. Firstly, on behalf of Jamiyah Singapore, let me express our sincere thanks to Honorable Minister Mr. S Iswaran for his kind agreement to officiate the opening of this seminar on interfaith, interracial harmony. We are thankful to you, Minister, for your kind support and encouragement to Jamiyah's community service mission. As we approach our 90th anniversary milestones next year, we are committed to continue with this mission. I wish to also extend a very warm welcome to our distinguished speakers. The willing participation of our panelists, despite their busy schedules, must be a clear indication that they are manifestly concerned about what is happening to our much cherished racial harmony. This harmony that we have endeavored to preserve and protect over many years is now being tainted and disturbed by recent events. While it is true that the recent incidences of racial outbursts are sporadic and few and far between, the fact that they occur so blatantly in public and with increasing regularity cannot and must not be left unchecked. All of us who believe and treasure the ethnographic emporium that is Singapore, where our diverse and plural ethnic and religious communities coexist and combine as one big family, are expected to uphold some dearly held principles and values. This must include racial and religious harmony, upon which our very own stability and prosperity, if not survival, depends. For sure, each of our ethnic communities has the right to practice and preserve our distinctiveness. But lest we forget, we have also agreed to forge and share a common national identity. And this common consciousness and shared solidarity are contingent upon our acceptance of a fundamental nation-building tenet, namely unity in diversity. Hence, any individual or any group that attempts to divide instead of unite us has to be taken to task, and we must do so fast and furious. For the seeds of racial bigotry and chauvinism must be rooted out with all force and early before they grow and uproot their surroundings. If you wonder why I am driven to express these sentiments in all innerness, the reason is this: I belong to an organization that has a long and proven history of working and collaborating with others, irrespective of race, religion, gender, or creed. For the record, Jamiyah Singapore, since the days of its founder, Maulana Abdul Alim Siddiq, champions the cause of racial and religious harmony and peaceful coexistence. In fact, in truth, our pioneers were the trailblazers in the interfaith activities. And Jamiyah actually led the foundations of the interreligious organization in Singapore way before Singapore's independence. Under the leadership of Tuan Haji Abu Bakar Maidin, this belief in inclusiveness and peaceful coexistence was further promoted with greater zeal. Since then, Jamiyah not only extend all our social and welfare services to everyone, but we also join hands in celebrating the festivities of different races and cultures. We are also quick to come to the forefront whenever incidents or acts of violence are committed by anyone, whatever their racial or religious affiliation. It is against this backdrop of our history and the recent occurrences of racial animosity in this republic that led us in Jamiyah to decide to host this seminar. For this to happen, we are indeed fortunate to receive the agreement of our distinguished panelists to come on board. Their profiles qualify them to articulate their views frankly and forthrightly. Let us look forward to hearing from them and share their concerns and ideas so that racial harmony can continue to be a shining beacon and hallmark that all Singaporeans can be proud of. Finally, as we approach our National Day next month, where the messages of unity, camaraderie, and togetherness will fill the air, I hope that this initiative and platform to reflect and search for new ways to bolster our common struggle and destiny will be welcome by all. Our sincere thanks to People's Association for supporting today's seminar. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hasbi. I was really moved when he said about the pioneer work of Jamiyah Singapore in the interracial harmony. It is at this place my journey for racial harmony and being an advocate for interfaith began as well. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, please join me again in welcoming our guest of honor, Mr. S Iswaran, Minister for Transport and Minister in charge of Trade Relations. Thank you for gracing us with your presence, Minister Iswaran. Thank you. It is my pleasure and honor to invite Minister Iswaran to formally open today's seminar with an address. Minister Iswaran, please.
Thank you very much. Dr. Muhammad Hasbi Abu Bakar, President of Jamiyah Singapore, friends and colleagues in Jamiyah, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen. Let me begin by first thanking Jamiyah Singapore for inviting me to this seminar on interracial harmony. It is a timely initiative with an apposite theme, especially in light of recent events. Multiracialism is a founding tenet of our nation. The quest for racial harmony is deeply imprinted in our national DNA, with the vision of one united people regardless of race, language, or religion, immortalized in our national pledge and in the words of our founding fathers. Many Singaporeans were therefore deeply perturbed, if not outraged, by recent acts of racial insensitivity in our society. And they have sparked an important national conversation on the state of racial harmony in Singapore and soul searching on the values we stand for as a society. The road to the unifying vision in our pledge is paved with challenges. The quest for a truly multiracial nation has never been easy, nor one we can take for granted. But despite the challenges, or perhaps because of them, it is vital that we persevere, hold fast to that inspiring vision, and stay the course. Singaporeans, especially those of an older generation, understand this, that it requires an unrelenting national effort, especially in the face of adversity, with each generation building on the progress painstakingly achieved by its predecessors. The creation of the Presidential Council of Minority Rights, the advent of community-based self-help groups, the establishment of special assistance plan schools, the introduction of ethnic quotas in HDB estates, and the formation of group representation constituencies. Each of these and other policies and programs serve a specific objective, and collectively, they also serve a larger purpose: to build and fortify our common space anchored by a common Singaporean identity, while according our different cultures, languages, and religions their own space to thrive. Singaporeans today still steadfastly hold to these ideals, but as our society evolves, so too will our perspectives on race and on ethnic-based policies, with differences arising from our lived experiences. And this is not new. In 1997, in my maiden speech as a newly elected Member of Parliament, I said that there is a concern amongst young Singaporeans, particularly professionals, that we may be becoming a more ethnocentric society at the expense of our national identity. I also emphasized the importance of reviewing our ethnic-based policies and programs as our needs and circumstances changed. Hence, nearly 25 years later, it should come as no surprise if younger Singaporeans hold different views on issues of race compared to their parents or their grandparents. It is noteworthy, for example, that in 2019, 22% of marriages were inter-ethnic compared to just 8% in 1990, a nearly threefold increase in 3 decades. Singaporeans of different races also have different lived experiences. In a 2018 survey conducted by the Institute of Policy Studies and onepeople.sg, about 1/5 of Malay and Indian respondents felt discriminated against when applying for a job, compared to just 3% Chinese respondents. We must acknowledge and respect these differences in perspectives across generations and races, and never discount or dismiss them. If we are to continue to grow our common space, its foundation rests on taking seriously these diverse viewpoints, which reflect the lived realities of Singaporeans. The question then, as posed by this seminar, is what more should be done? And I would like to contribute 3 ideas towards that discourse. First, as a society, we must take a clear stand against racist behavior, wherever, whenever. We are better than the insensitive acts of individuals born out of ignorance or prejudice. And ultimately, our values as a society must manifest in our words and our actions. Second, we must not let the intemperate actions of the few taint the good work of the many, nor let it lead us to the extreme. We have come this far because each community has exercised moderation and refrained from asserting its rights at all costs. We have recognized that our society is a precious commons that should be nurtured and shared with mutual respect and accommodation. And third, we should foster candid and constructive dialogue with the aim of strengthening mutual trust, respect, and accommodation. We must continue to build understanding across different ethnicities and faiths, and in this regard, community leaders and organizations must show the way by building relationships that foster mutual understanding amongst diverse groups and that can withstand the stresses and strains that may occur from time to time. Such dialogue also needs to take place across the generations. There is much to be gained from the wisdom and experience of older Singaporeans and the idealism and energy of younger Singaporeans to build an ever more just and equal Singapore. If we do this with mutual respect and an open mind, such mutual sharing can enrich our common ground and bring our society forward. Organizations like Jamiyah play an important role in nurturing a society that ever leans towards collaboration and cohesion. It is not just through your everyday activities and community efforts, but also by the positive example that you set of and for the different communities in Singapore that we can enlarge the common space and lay the ground for constructive, candid dialogue and engagement. I would like to conclude by sharing with you a memory that I have from the 1960s when I was a young kid. It is that of a $10 note bearing the image of 4 arms of 4 different hues linked together in solidarity. I think some of the older participants in this seminar might recall it. I must say that I didn't have a lot of opportunities then to actually hold such currency and use it, but it certainly left a vivid imprint in my mind of our multiracial society. It brought home the lesson that racial harmony is a whole of society project to which we each have a duty and responsibility. Like our founding generation, let us and all future generations of Singaporeans dedicate ourselves anew to the ceaseless endeavor of building a more just, equal, and harmonious multiracial Singapore. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Minister Iswaran. I would like to invite Dr. Muhammad Hasbi, President of Jamiyah Singapore, and Dr. H.M. Salim, Senior Vice President 1 of Jamiyah Singapore, to join us on stage for formal photo taking. Thank you. Thank you, Minister Iswaran. Thank you, Dr. Muhammad Hasbi and Dr. Salim. May I please request you to be seated? Thank you. I'm really curious about the $10 note now. I need to get a copy of that, actually. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to introduce our moderator for today's seminar. Dr. Isa Hussin is the Senior Vice President 3 of Jamiyah Singapore. He's an active community leader, having served as a member of the Feedback Unit, Films Appeal Board, Citizens Consultative Community, and Community Development Council. Dr. Isa has also written various articles on adult education and knowledge management. Please welcome Dr. Isa to lead and moderate the panel discussion titled Whither Racial Harmony in Singapore, What More Should Be Done? I also like to send an apology on behalf of Sue Ann, President of NUS Society. She's unable to join us because she just has a medical emergency. So I apologize on her behalf, and we'll pass it on to Dr. Isa to please take on the seminar.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fahima. I have the biodata of each and every one of our panelists on stage, but they have been mentioned several times, so I'm not going to take up time. I'd rather listen to them rather than repeat what has been heard earlier. The topic of today's seminar raises a few very interesting questions. It's been mentioned ad nauseum of the recent incidents that happened in Singapore. The fact that it was captured by camera circulated thousands of times, raises issues such as why do such attitudes persist in some quarters of our society? Racism, I acknowledge, is a very complex issue with no easy solution. The question then would be, where are we doing well? What can we work on to further improve the situation? What are the root causes of racism? It is my pleasure now to invite Ambassador Ong to be the first person to speak on this issue. Ambassador, please. Yes, you may. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Hussin. First of all, I appreciate this opportunity to be here, to interact with all of you and to share with you some of my views about the topic of today. The subject is Whither Racial Harmony, what do we do next? So perhaps I can just say, from my own experiences over the last almost 45 years of working in public service and on behalf of Singapore in different postings overseas, abroad, I think there is racial harmony in Singapore. The only problem is that most of us look at racial harmony from a particular narrow angle, which is that we tolerate each other. Yeah, I think to go to the next level of the true essence of racial harmony, we probably must go into a better understanding of why we have different way of worship, why we dress differently according to our culture, tradition, and faith, and why we don't eat certain things in our respective community due to our upbringing, our faith, and our tradition. Because if you don't really understand all this, it's a matter of time. Things will break down. Yeah, we've seen video of someone praying, ringing his bell, the neighbor's not happy, and she came out with a gong. While the bell is being rung, she beat on the gong. I try to understand this scene, and reminded me of my early days when I was working at the People's Association. We had to go down to some of these HDB flats in our so-called residential heartland to calm people down when they have a lot of cooking of curry or burning of Chinese joss paper during festivals, which the Chinese community observe. And, you know, selling all kind of food and other drinks or serving them during the fasting month of the Muslim community. So if we do not really appreciate some of these things, I think we will continue to be at the edge, and no one will know what will trigger off an outburst like what we have seen on some of the videos that have been circulating on internet. But at the same time, I should caution also that the reason why we are looking at these videos or getting worked up over what we've seen on internet, Dr. Hussin, is that internet and social media is now a part of our life. It's like the oxygen we breathe. Yeah. A few days ago, I had to be in contact with my wife to be picked up in the heavy rain, and she forgot her handphone. So there was no way to connect. Where do I meet you? And what time will you be there? Yeah. It reached that stage. When I was growing up as a young boy, we don't have this kind of luxury of having a mobile phone or connect instantaneously. So we plan our life very precisely. You must be at point X at 6 a.m. or 6 p.m., depending on what the function will be, and plus and minus 5 minutes. Yeah. But now, we are so reliant on the internet, the mobile phone, and anything that we get from friends or appearing on our WhatsApp or other mobile application, we read it, we send it off straight away to our friends. I think maybe we should be a bit more disciplined in that respect, sharing across the various social media spectrum. But at the same time, I think it is really necessary for us to appreciate some of the meaning of our various community in Singapore practicing their faith, practicing their customs and culture, and basically living their own life. Yeah. I think it is important for us to appreciate this and move on to the next level where we can discuss some of the actual policy measures which are already in place and how to improve them. But maybe this word that we are most familiar with, popular with in Singapore today, how to innovate on what we have. Innovation is always mistaken to be a technological dimension. It's not true. Yeah? The simplest of new ideas to work with one another, whether on the basis of our ethnicity or religion or what have you, would be an innovation. So let us think about this as we go along in our beautiful country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Ong. There are 2 points which you raised which kind of reminded me. I stay in a HDB flat. My immediate neighbors is Chinese. I have an Indian family and an Arab family. The Indian family, my neighbor, cooks some of the best curry. And every evening it will waft through my unit, my room. And I used to make comments on my wife, oh, that's beautiful, if only we have prata. I stopped saying that because she's a good cook and she doesn't take too kindly with my comments. No? Although she has no objection to the curry. The other point that you raised is very valid. As a society, how can we move from tolerance to acceptance? That's very, very important at this stage of our development. It's more, I tolerate you as long as you don't push that envelope further. No? Thank you, Prof. Thank you, Ambassador. Now, can I invite Dr. William Wan?
Thank you very much, Dr. Hussin. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm old enough to remember what Minister Iswaran said about the $10 note. I used them. And I still believe very optimistically and positively that Singapore is and will continue to be a religiously harmonious society. That doesn't mean that there are no minorities who are trying to disturb the balance. And we have to be very, very vigilant about that. I want to bring you back to the days when I used to live in a kampung. My neighbors were Chinese, Malay, Indian, Sikh, and even a Eurasian. Truly a microcosm of Singapore. In the very center of that village where we lived, the kampung, was a well. I want to talk about the well. The well was literally our watering hole. Every morning, as a little kid going to school, we would gather around the well. The first person to get to the well would use that pail and draw the water and put it on the ledge of the well, and we would bring our own little mugs and our own little toothbrush. I would gather around that well and would have our teeth brushed while chatting away with each other, if it is possible to do that at all, while brushing your teeth. But we did. What was that? The well was a symbol of a common space for the community of different races and religion to gather, a gathering space. Second, the well contains clean water. Clean water, clean enough for us to boil it and to drink it. It was precious. It was our lifeline. We own it. We guard it. We keep it clean without pollution. There was no laws to enforce it. We made our own law, and we were our own enforcement agency. No one dares to pee into that well, believe me, because you'll be skinned alive by the community. Because we own it. It is our well, how dare you? You see, there was no littering, there was no abusing, no misusing, no wasting of water. It was so precious. What was it then? That well symbolized a common space we own. It was about ownership. The third thing about the well is the pail. We needed the pail because we can't draw the water without the pail. The pail was always there. I don't remember who put it there, but it was a shared tool. It was a piece of equipment without which we would not be able to have our water. We use that to draw the water from the well. Anyone can use it. It was not chained to anything. It was a free, floating, sitting pail. Nobody took it away. Nobody stole it. It was always there 24 hours a day. You can go to the well anytime and use that same pail to draw water. It was a common sense of ownership and sharing. We help each other to draw water. Some older neighbors may be a bit frail. We young people will help the older people to draw the water because the water can be heavy. We help each other. We draw the water when needed. So what was that? The pail, the well, was a common space to share. In my second half, I will talk about a common space together. What's the future for all of us? A common space to own. How can we do that? And a common space to share. So that's my vision of what Singapore can be, because that is what Singapore was. And we can make it happen again. Perhaps in a new way with social media. Perhaps we don't need the well anymore. We have running water. The funny thing about life is that when we were poor, when we were not so affluent, when we had very little, we seem to share a lot more. But when we have more, we seem to want more for ourselves and somehow less willing to share. How can we change that mindset? How can we have this common space? Now, that's what I want to talk about later on. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. William Wan. You mentioned about your experiences living in a kampong, raised as a kid in a kampong. It also reminded me when I was growing up, I grew up in a neighborhood of Chinese, Indian, mixed group of people. And I remember playing around with them, even with girls within the neighborhood, completely oblivious of the fact that I'm a Malay, then he's a Tamil, he's Indian. Only at a certain age of my time, then somebody reminded me, hey, by the way, you're a Malay, you're not supposed to do that. Then it dawned on me. But you're seeing how wonderful it is when you go to a neighborhood school, especially the early childhood centers, the kindergarten. You see the kid queuing up to go to the classes. And there is this boy, Malay boy, holding on to a Chinese girl and talking nicely, holding hands. Oh, this is something which I think I wish we still remember. Some of the best friends I have in my life are still my Chinese, my Indian. I have few Malay friends that I hold very dearly, but I'm richer by the fact that you reminded me of having friends from other races, other ethnic groups. Thank you very much for the reminder. It is now my pleasure to invite Professor Kirpal Singh to address us. Prof.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, great pleasure to be here. In the interest of time, I'll go straight into a couple of things that I've been thinking about this in terms of our meeting today. And I thought that it might be useful to remind ourselves that quite often when we speak about Singapore, the probable word, and I need your inputs as well, but the most probable word in the context of the subject matter that we are talking about is probably tolerance. I think it's necessary now, maybe, since some years have passed since we gained independence, so we can't blame anybody else anymore or even give credit to anybody else. We are our own people and we are making our own destiny. I think the challenge is, how do we move from tolerance to acceptance and maybe the next stage to loving? At the moment, I think we tolerate the way different people in our community behave, conduct themselves, and move on. We are not totally, I think, not 100% at the level of acceptance. I think some of our laws have, in a way, enforced or compelled us to accept that there are differences that we must accept if we want to continue to be Singapore citizens. But legalities remain exactly that. They are laws, and if you disobey, you get punished. But they don't actually create a society that I would call is harmonious. So, in a way, dabbling in words, what's the difference between a tolerant society and a harmonious society? It's an interesting thing because it occurs almost every day. Memories of, Kampung. I used to live in Kampung Eunos, and in those days, Jalan Mangga, which was my jalan, and I think, ex-minister Zainal would remember, we used to be not just holding hands. I mean, we used to wrestle with girls and boys, on the ground, and we hurt ourselves and all that. But at the end of the day, we were very, very happy and delightful. And I remember the entire kampung. There were a whole mix of people from Eurasians to the normal Malay, Chinese, Indian, Sikhs, and all of that. But we were always very, very custodial about our kampung and about the the taps that were along the various jalans, because those days water was not so easily available. And so we used to gather around these taps and not only brush our teeth and all that, but sometimes even bathe. And many of us had work to do, like we were given pails to go and collect water from the taps and bring home, or take the water home. And I think this is quite memorable in the sense that as I grow older, I begin to feel a bit sad, because when I look at my own children, of course they go to school, they have the usual, syllabi and all of that. But somehow, either we've become a little bit more timid, or we've become maybe overly influenced by the Western domination of our educational landscape. We find that the examples from the United Kingdom, even Australia, but Australia is a bit of an exception here, but United Kingdom, USA, and all of that, is that there are two extremes in which interreligious, interracial issues might be discussed. One is, we know what the blacks do, right? America. We know blacks are like that. Or we may say, these orang putih guys, these white guys in the UK, they are like that. They're not going to totally understand why we need to burn Joss paper. In fact, along my James Street, I don't even know where I can burn my Joss paper. So this location, in some ways, can be useful in the sense that it compels us to re-examine where we came from, where we are, and where we possibly may want to go. I think this is probably the level at which tolerance may slowly begin to move towards acceptance and then towards loving. I think what we lack in Singapore is probably loving. when we can safely say that we have now arrived at a point where we love what the different communities do, that would be a real milestone in the evolution of our national Singaporean identity. Because at the moment when we say we are multiracial, multi-religious, multi-ethnic, all we are saying to the world is that we have got all kinds of people that we are composed of. But if somebody were to be very inquisitive, and mind you, some of the new journalists are pretty aggressive, they'll say, yes, 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 we know all of that. But tell me, how often do you visit your Malay neighbors? Oh, well, whenever they invite me. Whenever they invite me. In other words, if they don't invite you, chances are you will not knock on their door and go in and say, hey, I've got 2 hours free, can I just come in and talk with you, or maybe just, you know, experience the way you're cooking and all of that. So, especially in our HDB sort of estates, of course there are playgrounds, and it's interesting that over the years, I personally observed in some of these playgrounds, a little bit of a move from a real mixing of different sort of ethnic, religious groups to a more segregated kind of groupings. I live in the Choa Chu Kang sort of area, and there, even in the basketball court and things like that, you find a group of Malay boys may come and try their hand at basketball. But when the Chinese guys come in and take over, they literally take over. All right? The Malays slowly begin to move along the edges. They sit for a while, they watch, and then they go and play their football wherever they can find some space. I think one of the things that I've asked myself is, why don't the one group of boys, and they're usually all boys, very rare girls playing basketball and all of that, or even the football kicking around, why don't they integrate? And I think this is a big challenge. Living side by side does not suggest that we are an integrated society. Integration requires a lot more. Integration also means that if I knock on your door to complain about your child, I'm actually trying to help you to produce a better child than be critical of. And I think this has led to a kind of apprehensiveness. So we are all very apprehensive. I've heard even in my own estate, people saying, yeah, you know, not your business, so why are you interfering? There's a kind of standoffness. So I wish and I pray that we will evolve to a society where we see other children like our own children, and if we give our advice to our own children, where our advice to these other children will also be accepted in the same vein and with the same kind of, joy. Because I think anything good should be joyful. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you for walking through the early days of your life in terms of our experiences, our upbringing, and all that.
Yeah.
I mean, the only recollection I have of the racial riots, when I was still a very young boy, was that people say, how serious, don't go out because there's all these things happening out there. Yeah. But I don't seem to sense that in the kampong because my Chinese neighbor is very protective of the Malay family there, and so is the Indian for them. And we were safe. Yeah. They don't allow anybody from outside to come in. Correct. And it was that. Yeah. The kind of love and understanding, and that goes beyond tolerance that we constantly reminded ourselves. Thank you for that reminder. It is now my pleasure to call upon Ms. Bryna Sim. She's someone who's very, very on in terms of social media or that. So question you can ask her later on will be on that area in terms of how it impacted upon our understanding of what racial harmony means in Singapore. Ms. Bryna, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everyone, for having me. As I prepared to be here today, I found myself asking, why am I here, actually? And what has allowed me to be here among such esteemed panelists and guests? And I think it's really because of the commentary that I wrote just last month about racism in Singapore. In it, I shared about some of the unpleasant incidents that I've encountered, some of which were very similar to what has now gone viral on social media, the incident concerning Mr. Dave and the now ex-lecturer. So I really appreciated all the sharings from everyone here so far. And it's interesting because I think my story kind of starts off several decades later from all of you who have shared so far. There is no kampong experience for me, you know, and I do not know anything about this $10 note that the minister was talking about. Yeah, but I do want to share from the point of view as someone who has been born and bred here, as someone who has grown up in the system. So my story, as I mentioned, starts off several years later because I'm now 35. And growing up, I actually did not have schoolmates, much less classmates, who were of minority races. So throughout my primary school life and throughout my secondary school life, there was C, but no M, no I, no O. It was only at the age of 17 that I started to interact with people from minority races on an everyday basis. But even though I went to SEP schools, and I know that that's also an issue of debate now as a supposedly problematic kind of school arrangement, I always recall celebrating Racial Harmony Day in school, even at a young age. It was always a fun and celebratory occasion where we were taught to appreciate the cultures of different races. I remember music lessons in schools where I may not have had classmates who were of other races, but we were always singing those community building songs, you know, in different languages. And interestingly, I recall when I was in primary 3, I actually went to learn an Indian dance from a neighbor to perform at my school's Racial Harmony Day celebrations. So some things are learned in school, but some things are not learned in school. And for that, I would say I have to thank my parents. My mom was a tuition teacher when I was growing up. And because of that, because of the students that she had, I was able to mix around and learn from those from other races. So what I may not have gotten in school, I got at home because my mom welcomed these students of minority races into the home. And it was actually one of these students that I also ended up playing with and having, as Prof Kirpal mentioned, playground dates with. I think my biggest lesson on racial harmony began when I met my then boyfriend, now husband, in university. And we decided to begin dating. As I wrote in my commentary, we, like Mr. Dave Prakash, were subjected to some very unpleasant incidents that were very shocking to me, especially because I did not grow up in that sense, you know, interacting with those from minority races on an everyday basis. That idea that race was seen as a barrier to love and marriage was shocking and new to me. But I think what followed were years of learning from society and also amongst interactions with friends and loved ones. What followed were years of learning, understanding, trying to understand, understanding what tolerance meant, really understanding what forgiveness, embracing, and loving means. Now, as a mother of 2 young mixed-race children, I think this lesson in racial harmony continues in a very real way on an everyday basis. What do I want my children to learn about Singapore? What do I want them to take away, you know, in their years of growing up and understanding people from different races? And as I've shared about my own schooling experience, I think that while schooling is important, and I'm actually in the middle of the Primary 1 registration process as we speak, I realized that, and I know that from my years in the system, that the idea of learning racial harmony or loving or forgiving someone cannot be just kind of divvied to the school. While the school has a role to play, as someone now shepherding young children, young lives who are part of the next generation, it is really up to me and my husband and the help of the community to learn what it is to be a safe and brave space for my children. My hope is that our family can be a beacon of light and take things onwards and upwards in the field of racial harmony in Singapore. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for sharing your personal experiences with us. I'm reminded of what Bryna mentioned when I gave a talk at the Civil Service College, trying out one experiment with the class of 30-odd individuals. I actually asked them, when I came into the class, I said, switch on your handphone. And they were a bit perplexed because they were just warned, switch off your handphone before the facilitator comes into the classroom. Then they did that. Then I said, okay, by a show of hand, how many of you would have a Malay name in your directory, telephone directory? Out of the 30, not a single one. Then I said, I'm very, very concerned because you're going to make policy for my kids, for my grandchildren, for my community. And you have absolutely no idea as to who is a Malay. And somebody actually cheekily put up the hand and said, I thought you don't look like a Malay, that's why we didn't do that. So of course I stopped that joke anymore. But that's a timely reminder. We may not have the experiences earlier in our life to interact, but we make it up when we grow. We make sure that our children are exposed to that. That's extremely important. Thank you for that timely reminder. Prof Hussin, your turn.
You know, sitting in this building, discussing about racial harmony, brings back memories which I would rather not reminisce. The year 1964, the occasion, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, annual birthday celebrations happening in front of this building there at the field. I vividly remember that. I was there as a kid joining this annual procession. The tragedy, unscrupulous, devious elements disrupted the procession, and you had racial riots, Malays, Chinese, forgive me for using this rough word, killing each other, and curfew island-wide, 1964. And my generation during the time promised ourselves, hoping it will not repeat again. But then it did. Again, 1969. So that's the opening drama or context I want to share before I highlight 3 or 4 main points as my reflections in looking at the recent racist pensions in Singapore. Sporadic they may be, but equally worrisome. I think broadly, the recent racist flare-ups should serve as reality check to all of us. You, me, Singapore, Singaporeans. Reality check. Who we are vis-a-vis others. What kind of future we want Singapore to be. Are we really a developed nation? Are we praising, in self-accolades, the things that we are number one, this all over the world, and so on? These are not philosophical questions. These are sober, practical matters with wide ramifications for the future of our lives in this republic that we love. So let me share quickly what I would call 4 reflection points. Let us reflect on this. This is round 1, right? Reflections about all these matters, yeah. The first point is this. Because of historical and political reasons, this has been expressed by some of the panelists. Race has been, as it were, in the air, entrenched, embedded in the psyche of Singapore. It's there, it's always has been. A small correction, it's not there since independence. It's already there since colonial times. We read history, we teach politics. You just look at all the different forms that we have to fill up. What's your race? Reminding me that I had a former Australian colleague in university who happens to be a fan of Louis Hamilton. When he was asked to fill the column race, he wrote F1. I suppose in disgust, something to be taken seriously for him. What the heck, why are you doing this? Why are you asking me my race? I'm coming to serve this place. So, talking about race, if you ask me, rationally like today, openly, this is a sign of a maturing state. However, indulging in blatant racist acts in the public domain is a sign of a state grappling to find its bearing, grappling to find its very own soul. So I would say, arguably, Singapore is a state, not yet a nation. We can pick this up in the question and answer if there are queries about this major distinction, which we should not use interchangeably as if they are the same. They are not. That's the first point. The second reflection point, which I thought we may want to ponder on this important issue, is this. I suspect that, that these racial predispositions, racial uneasiness, to put it mildly, is part and parcel of the DNA of human beings, of human nature. This is the dark side of a person. We have our good side, bad side, and in our own personality. It's there. The challenge, of course, is to transform and nurture this bad side into a good side. So changing human nature into a humane persona who will speak about humanity, who will value universal ideas of love, kindness, compassion, all the things that human beings should be talking about, all the things that some of our panelists have raised during the Kampung days. So when all this outburst happens, I think it is natural for us to see the dismay and resentment. But I think let's remind ourselves that these abhorrent acts, they will recur again. And we better be prepared for it, prepare well next time. I have two more points to share. The third one. When all these things happens recently, and some people scramble to find answers, why and how these racist bigots and chauvinists suddenly appear in our midst, when Singapore is known as a peaceful haven, the example to the world. And some fingers have pointed to the recent ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. I tell myself, please give me a break. There shouldn't be any kind of positive correlation between your outbursts and what's happening to the world with this pandemic. You cross the red line, which all of us have agreed is precious in Singapore. There is no excuse. Don't blame anybody else but you. I think, as President Jamiyah, Dr. Hasbi mentioned just now, it's time to call a wolf and deal with it. And the time is allowing us to talk about all these things sincerely, forthrightly, with the hope of improving the situation. And here's my final point. The quest for racial harmony, of course, is important, but I think we need patience, we need forbearance and perseverance, because this is indeed an ongoing, continuing process. We can't say there is a problem, let's solve it, get things done. It doesn't work like that. One shouldn't presume once we achieve racial harmony there's no need to do more to integrate the society. You look at the recent episodes in human history, even in developed countries where ethnic cleansing happens. You know, neighbors, not to mention there are diplomats here, we have to be a bit diplomatic to not mention names of countries and individuals. You have neighbors who stayed 200 years, generations together, killing each other, ethnic cleansing. Race, you and I, we are different. So I think let's remember that these ethno-religious sentiments can easily implode and be reignited, and we shouldn't be complacent. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Prof. Hussin. Timely reminder that it's still work in progress, so as far as we're concerned. But one thing which reminded me now is the rules been changed to allow for your identity card, NRC, to have more than one ethnic group. I mean, you can have Chinese/Indian, Malay/Eurasian. I tried that, so I actually changed mine and put Malay Eurasian because my mom was Eurasian. And my wife said, why in the name of heaven did you do that? So I called ICA, I said, can I change it? No, you change it once, that's it. You're going to keep it for the rest of your life. Also a timely reminder, before you go into that line, please think twice. Okay, thank you very much, panelists. It's very, very interesting. The points you raised, of course, are food for thoughts, reflections. There's going to be some question asked, okay, how do we go about doing it? We're going to start the second half of the panelists speaking to our audience in the reverse order. That's why I kind of prolonged this a little while, let Prof. Hussin has his breath before he starts. It's a very, what you call, passionate individual as far as it's concerned. Before you drink, Prof, it's now your turn. All right. You have 7 minutes, a little bit longer than usual.
Okay, this is round 2, yet again into the boxing ring, at least not in the lion's den. The moderator posed a question to us, what more should be done? Suggesting, of course, that much have already been done. I think it is true. Let's acknowledge this. Much has been done officially by the government to try to make us live livable lives. As Prof. Kirpal said, you know, for the moment, tolerate each other, hoping to the next step, accepting, accommodate, loving, that kind of gradation. But because much has been done, I suspect and I fear there may be this temptation, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I disagree, actually. And I think the government, I hope, will disagree. If you look at government policies and strategies and so on, you know, key words have been used about, you know, we need to preempt, we need to proactive, and I think Ambassador Ong, I was listening just now, used the word need to innovate, map out scenarios for future planning to anticipate. So all these values, sentiments, suggest even if it is not broken, do something about it and try to make it even better. So the suggestion could be, for the moment, from me, probably it's time, you know, to review some government policies and laws. Because some of these laws and policies, either they may be no longer serving the purpose they were originally meant to be, or failing to seal the cracks that are now surfacing. No harm, right, to improve all these things that we already have from what the government have done and done much. But that's my first reaction in terms of what more to be done. I suppose my approach will be to try to see what target groups that can be burdened and asked to do something more. So the first one is really targeting at the government, maybe do a bit more to review. The government may also want to, I think, have a greater clarity in this important tenet of Singapore's nation-building agenda, which is multiculturalism. I say this, I've always been a political scientist, I say this because people use the term multiculturalism interchangeably, sometimes alternate and so on, with multiracialism. They are not the same. The difference is more than nuance, if you ask me. Prof Kirpal is a doyen of language and literature, will know how substantive the difference is. Broadly, the assumptions and the outcomes are different. Mindsets and deliverables are different. Briefly to summarize the difference. In multiracialism, the state approaches the diversity of peoples in a country as liabilities needing to be calibrated of their actions. Liabilities, let's calibrate the actions, control, manage, try to handle it. That's multiracialism. Multiculturalism is a little bit more profound, different. It assumes and accepts the diversity and heterogeneities of peoples. They are assets, not liabilities. They are assets. Because they are assets, they needed to be celebrated, not calibrated. So multiracialism, liabilities, calibration. Multiculturalism, assets, let's celebrate, different. So I think as much as we regularly use these two terms, it's useful to make that distinction. The second target group, which I was hoping to refer to, now that Ms. Wee, the president of the NUS Students' Union, is not here, I think it is important to do a lot more to our youth in terms of mending fences of inter-ethnic disharmony, in terms of getting new Singaporeans to look at race from new lenses and new perspectives. I concede that, the tendency will be for many of us to look at a family to say parents, elders, they are the people who will invite values and so on. It's good to get them so that they will then teach their children how to live in a multiracial society. My view is, probably our pioneers and Merdeka generation leaders, they have done enough for Singapore. Why don't we just let them rest for a while and focus attention to the youth? I say this because the youth, all of us know this. They are exposed to globalization, they are exposed to a more cosmopolitan environment. They are better educated. I think they are more willing to engage in discourses of this nature and more acceptance of diversities. Because a lot of people have forgotten that, our pioneers and our elders, their lived experiences may not be easy to be erased. They live in difficult times. We talk about racial riots, the memories, the jaundiced views of race, the stereotypes, everything else. It's all with them. It's not easy to erase. So let's refocus and spend a little bit more time on the youth. My third target point, which I suppose we can ask more to be done, probably I can gently glance at Ms. Bryna, the media, social media. I think Ambassador Ong and all the others did emphasize, the criticality of media, the reality in our midst today. We cannot talk about all these developments by just marginalizing the critical role of the media. It's just not possible. So let's talk a bit about the social media. If you ask me, racial predispositions, biases, all these things have been there for a long time. The reason why they appear now is because of social media, mostly so. So the social media, Bryna, I think have a greater sense of responsibility to not only expose all these things, let the culprits be shamed, let also we can indicate the kind of penalties and sanctions meted to people who act on these abhorrent activities. So that's the role of the social media, which I think can be considered. I have two more points, and I'll stop for a while. The next target group, which I thought we must be talking about, is, and I have to be a bit careful here, not wanting to be censured as being racist. I think the racial majority in Singapore, probably if we can appeal to them, the Chinese, to do a bit more in appeasing this feeling of vulnerabilities amongst the minorities. It's just an appeal. I'm speaking about the Chinese, not because they're Chinese. I'm speaking because they are Singaporeans, they are fellow comrades. Together like us, they want to build this harmonious country. Together, that is the spirit. So hopefully if they can do a bit more, it'd be nice. And my message is not new. People like us, I'm looking at all the panelists, who live long will remember, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew mentioned the same thing many, many decades ago. He says that in moments of national crisis, to know whether we are a united nation or not, let's see whether the majority people, Chinese, come to the help of the minorities. He did say that, I remember that. And of course, most recently, our Minister Lawrence Wong, was it a fortnight ago? One of the possible future leaders of Singapore, mentioned the same thing again about this. Let me end by 2 points. One is that it's not fair to ask for the majority to take the burden to do all these things without really appealing for the minority communities too. I'm not saying it takes two to tango. I'm just saying that, in these difficult moments, 2 words are important to me that needed to be reminded. Context and proportionality. Because I think when we get all these racist slurs and so on, do not exaggerate. Do not take things out of proportion and then relate to other things which was not the original sin of the offender. And if the offender seek forgiveness and show some remorse, let's accept it. I think it's a strength of character of the minorities to do that. It's not a weakness to do that. I want to end by saying that, of course, I'm concerned about the recent trends. But I think compared to many countries in the world where ethnic harmony is concerned, we shouldn't be feeling this gloom and doom. Singapore is still one of the better places in the world. You look at things today, you say, thank God this is Singapore. We are Singaporeans. So things are not so bad, and they're quite good. When I look at the panelists, Dr. Wan, for instance, and all his movement about kindness, I think if all of us can rally around to be more kind to each other. And now that Kirpal also nodding, if we be like Kirpal, I haven't met Kirpal Singh. We were kampung folks many, many decades ago in Zainul and everything else, But whenever we met, Kirpal would say, hi, brother. And he says this genuinely, no making up. It's a good feeling. So we have people like Dr. Wan, Kirpal, and all the others movements. Things should be all right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. Hussin. It's a timely reminder that we as an individual, we as a community, we as a nation, we have our roles to play. We cannot leave it to just one part, one individual, one community, or for that matter, the government, to tell us what to do. We must play our part. Thank you for that reminder. Ms. Bryna, can we hear from you, please? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So in this second portion of our discussion, the question that's been asked to us is, what more can be done? What more can be done? And I think that I would like to refer to something that was suggested to me as part of the commentary that I wrote. In the commentary, one of the experts that I interviewed, she actually suggested that there is a need for a safe space. And her definition of a safe space is an avenue for people to have their assumptions clarified. A place where people who want to know and understand can have the freedom to ask honest questions without being recorded or the fear of being threatened, and then have things blown up. And I wrote in my commentary that I think that prospect is very encouraging. A safe and respectful space where there is no judgment so long as the questions are genuine and the attitude is right. In another one of today's pieces called The Big Read, where we also tackled this issue of racism in Singapore, there was another expert quoted who urged not just the creation of a safe space, but the creation of a brave space. And this definition of a brave space involves the willingness to interrogate our own assumptions and to take a stand to correct our inability to see privilege and other blind spots that we may have. So a safe space to open up the conversation and a brave space to ensure that the conversation then becomes transformative and not just a mere exchange of stories or retelling or recounting our histories. So to answer what more can be done, I think that those two ideas are good ones. A safe space and a brave space. I think we all agree that there needs to be constructive conversation, that we need to take this forward. But how do we do that, right? How do we have these constructive conversations? And I know that there are already organizations in place that sort of facilitate racial and religious harmony and understanding. But in formalized, institutionalized spaces, sometimes there is a conversation that takes place at a certain level. But how about something a bit more ground up? So as much as I like also these ideas of a safe space and a brave space, I wonder how we can do that. Like, how can we actually do those things, right? And I think that one of the ways we can start is really with us and at home. So the space does not necessarily need to be in a very formalized setting, but amongst the people that we know, amongst friends. So I remember that when I was writing the article, I was approaching these experts as people who, I wanted to get, ideas from. But I was kind of taken aback, and I thought it was a good kind of being taken aback when one of the experts said, you are a Chinese married to a Punjabi, and you are in the perfect position to start a safe space. And I was actually really, I did not expect to have that question, when you are an interviewer, you do not expect to have the question thrown back to you. How about you do it, right? Don't just say other people do it, but you do it. And I think that that's something that I'm going to be thinking about in the days to come. But I think that for sure, it starts at home, it starts with me, it starts with my social circles and my community. The second thing that I wanted to share with regard to what more can be done is really about attitude. And I think Prof mentioned about this idea of social media, right? And how it sort of facilitates all this, right? And I was thinking about it, and I think that sometimes when I look at that incident, right, the incident that blew it all up, right, I think that while it's a really good wake-up call for all of us, I sometimes wonder if there was another way in which this could have all panned out, right? Sometimes we need something like this to kind of shock us and spur us to action. But, now someone's lost his job, right? On a human-to-human level, someone's lost his job, and it's sad, right? And I just wonder whether something could have been done to help him in his thinking, to help just, bounce all these thoughts that he had with somebody else before it came to this. So I wrote in my commentary these two phrases. Anger speeds up, and love slows down. Anger speeds up, and love slows down. And I think that in this age of social media, it's very easy to be angry, right? You're angry, you want to show that you're angry. I'm gonna whip out my phone now, I'm gonna record all of you, okay? Then take that, and I'm gonna post it, and then ta-da, justice be done upon you. But where is the love in that? And where is the, where is the love in that? So I think that the attitude with which we need to approach these things is very important. I think a forum like this, a seminar like this is perfect in kind of like allowing us to air our views about these very pertinent issues. But at the same time, I know that I'm in the business of social media, right? I'm the social media editor. But at the same time, as somebody consuming this, I sometimes wonder whether it could have been done differently. Yeah. And the last thing that I wanted to share is really about my children and the way in which they see these incidents. So I wrote in my commentary that when I go to coffee shops and hawker centers, I have these people commenting about the skin color of my children, right? So I have hawkers who would say, why is your daughter so dark, right? Or some would say, why is your daughter so black, right? And it really does not sound nice. And then there will be stallholders, or okay, let's not brand stallholders, but just general people who might come up to me unsolicited and say, oh, your son is so fair, he looks more Chinese, oh, that's good. But why is that good or why is that bad? And why are you saying that he's fair or why are you saying that she's dark, right? But that's me as somebody who is now 30 over years old, having lived in this system and taking in all these things from over the years. But when I ask my children, right, when I ask my daughter, who's sometimes in the presence of these things, and I'm trying to kind of shield her by reacting positively, right? I ask her after that, darling, what do you think about what has been said? How do you feel, right? Because I want her to not be hurt by the things that she's kind of listening to. And it amazes me when she says, I don't feel anything, mommy. I don't feel anything. I'm not upset. I'm not angry. Auntie just said something, uncle just said something, and that's it. And I think that purity in thinking, some might say naive, but I think that purity is also something valuable, because I think in this day and age, all too often, and especially enabled by social media, it's very easy to become angry. It's very easy to become reactive, right? But I think our children, or my children, show me that there is another way of thinking, right? Another way of thinking where you can listen to something, be in the presence of an unpleasant incident, but at the same time be able to say, it's okay, mommy, it's okay. Auntie said something, and that's what she said. But there is no aggression attached to the thinking behind it. And I think if that is the way we can approach matters going forward, it's not naivety. I think it's valuable, right? Where we can say, okay, we have a problem, and then this is what was said, and then what should we do about it? I think that there are movements now on social media, call it out, SG, let's call it out, let's say something. But I think that the attitude with which we make these comments is important, because it's one thing to call it out, but are we really engaging with the problem then? Yeah, that's what I have to share. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. You're a good mom. That's my conclusion. I mean, but with social media sometimes, I just wonder whether a very trivial issue has been conveniently categorized as something to do with race. The one incident that came to mind recently is over the waffle. The Malay lady went to a bakery, actually asked for a waffle. The lady serving her says, there's no more waffle. And there was a Chinese gentleman who was behind her. He came forward to the counter, and the lady had a waffle in a paper bag. She didn't even stop to ask whether this gentleman has pre-ordered a waffle. Straight away, she went on social media and said, racism. The most I would do is get upset that I didn't get my waffle. I won't come back to the bakery. There's another bakery across the road. What is a big deal about that waffle? So you raise it to a level where everybody get excited. Everybody jumped in, not knowing where it first started, why was it so. And like Bryna mentioned, you get your day in the limelight. how many likes and dislikes, it got spread all over the face. The waffle then become maybe a cake, and the cake become the order for a wedding cake, and the story is lost somehow, and nobody comes back to the real issue of finding out why. Why is that so big a deal that you want to say it? It's a good reminder. Thank you, Bryna. Prof, your turn now.
You know, listening to both the speakers just now brings back so many memories. But one of the memories that it brings back is the year 1967. I was in pre-university 1. Those that you used to call pre-U, pre-university 1. Nowadays, my son says, Daddy, what's pre-university? And I say, JC. Then he understands, so we moved, right? It's a significant move because when concepts move, thinking behind those concepts either gets historical, in other words, for research, or it gets completely lost. I think this is a very, very big worry. But the point I was going to make is that in 1967-68, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew introduced something that perhaps maybe now has to be resurrected. He had two wonderful gentlemen, both Eurasians. One was the father of our current Justice Judith Prakash, the father. The other was a gentleman called G.G. Thompson. The task that LKY had given these two gentlemen was to go around Singapore schools and talk to Secondary 3, Secondary 4, and Pre-U1 and Pre-U2 students about living in a multiracial, multi-religious, and multilingual society. And I remember G.G. Thompson asked us, he said, all you guys, I was in an all-boys school then, and now the school has become co-ed as well. But anyway, in those days, he asked all the boys, all the 600 of us were sitting in this big hall. And he said, close your eyes. And we all closed our eyes. And he said, just be calm. We became calm. Now he says, wake up, and around you, everybody else is just like you. There's no one else of a different color, different hairdo, different, uniform, anything. Everybody is uniform, exactly the same. Would you want to live in that society? He said. Those of you who want to live in that society, put up your hands. And only 1 or 2 hands went up. And till today, I've been wondering, why did those 2 hands go up? It's an interesting sort of puzzle, just, more enigmatic than anything else. But the rest of us didn't put up our hands. Because we asked ourselves, if I woke up tomorrow and I had no Malay neighbors, no Indian friends, no Chinese wives, whatever, no mixtures, all the foods, for example, would be monotonous. Dressing would be monotonous. Language would be monotonous. Monotony writ large, by the way, has never been embraced by any culture. Some of the early Greek islands, right? We always talk about, other Athens, with all its culture and all of that, and the adjacent city with all its physical strength. And the two, in a way, were both proud of their own individual achievements, but imagine if they had married and got together, they would be culturally very, very strong, and in terms of their strength, they'd be very, very cultured. And that is what I think Mr. Lee Kuan Yew and his leaders that went out to speak to us were trying to say. If you woke up tomorrow and the provision shop that you go to, he's not suddenly your Tamil guy, or your Malay man, or your Chinese, or whatever it is, Eurasian, how would that feel? You look around, everybody looks like you. I think the dynamic that Mr. Lee was trying to pass on to us is that as we evolve, mixture is going to be perhaps more and more the norm of the day than purity, as it were. And this raises very, very strict and serious questions because we all like to think we are pure. At one time, I come from a mixed marriage, meaning my wife is in the audience here. She's of a different, what we may call race. I'm a product also of a mixed race. My father's Sikh, my mother's Scottish. And so when these revelations come to fore, and I ask myself, wow, what difference has that made to my upbringing, and what difference did it not make to people who didn't have that kind of, I suppose, parentage? But we live in a world now where they say that the world has become a little village. And the old adage, you know, it takes a village to bring up a child, right? I think it originated in Africa, but it's all around the world. So today, that village could be the whole nation. One of the things that I've been toying with, and I don't mind telling you, I've had lots of run-ins with the Ministry of Education, ultimately my, you know, employer for 45 years. And different directors, you know, different DGEs. My wife always says, no need to talk too much about them, huh? All right? Because the reason is, many of us dare not say it because we are living in fear, or were living in fear. I think we are much more robust in our articulations these days. But in the old days, we didn't even sort of want to talk about race, language, or religion. These were taboo. And today, with the openness, I think all sociologists, you know, sociological studies reveal that between the era of don't talk about it, huh, to the transition where, hey, talk about it, why are you so scared? There is an interim, sometimes called an interregnum. And the difference is very pointed. The interim could be calm, but interregnums very rarely are calm. They are explosive and they are volatile. So we can either position ourselves now, are we gone past, are we at the interim, are we at the interregnum, or are we now at the very beautiful evolution to something that is really, really very successful? 1975, I think, was the first time that I wrote to the Ministry of Education to say that all schools should be taught intercultural understanding. It should be a mandatory compulsory module for the O-level examinations. At that time called the Cambridge School Certificate, and then they had the Cambridge Higher School Certificate. Firstly, the MOE didn't think it was a worthy question to even respond to. Next, when they finally responded, after I wrote in again twice to say, why is my question not being answered, they said, maybe now is not the time. This was those days, 30, 40 years ago. But maybe today is the time when there should be a mandatory module or a course or a program of study, could be 6 weeks, could be 8 weeks, within camps and all of that, that actually talks about these issues that we are addressing today. Because the young minds that are 16 and 17, they are so fertile, they will not only concoct different sort of recipes to make the positivity of the notion of multiculturalism, living together in a plural society come true, but they will actually see that the actions that are needed for that to actually happen, they actually take place. Because our young today are quite full of fervor, they are enthusiastic, they are energized, they don't have the mug like the way we used to mug. I don't know how many of us here remember the time we spent just mugging. Nowadays, they're thinking a lot. And I think it's a very good and very wholesome move towards that kind of situation where you're actually looking for actionable steps that you can take to make Singapore truly what we proclaim ourselves to be to the rest of the world, a living testimony that multiracial living is not only possible, but desirable. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof.
Thank you.
I'm just wondering, looking at the statistics, it indicated that mixed marriages is on the increase.
Yeah.
There'll be more and more. Would children of mixed marriages be more tolerant towards racism, racial issue, racial harmony? Or are they just Singaporean generally? It's not. And also you reminded also about MOE and the curriculum in school. I'm reminded by some of the principal. The first question when I posed that, they asked me, is it an examination subject? I said no, they're not necessary. We'll just have one day they dress up in racial harmony costume, we bring some kueh tart and whatever they eat, and off they go.
Yeah.
If it's examination, yes. And also the set stage that we are in where literature, for instance, reading and all that in school.
Yep.
When I ask them, do you read anything beyond Julius Caesar, the prescribed text? They say, why?
Yeah.
It's not in the exam. So just Julius Caesar. I said, no.
Correct.
Shakespeare wrote more than just Julius Caesar. No?
Correct.
There's a whole series. I said, no, it's not examination. It's not part of the examination.
We are
syllabus.
obsessed with exams.
It's pretty sad. So just a question, I wonder. Since there are more and more of us coming on mixed marriages, most likely my daughter will marry someone other than my own race. So I'm also wondering, the children and how they see this issue. Okay? Thank you, Prof.
Welcome. Thank you.
Dr. Wan?
Bryna was talking about anger speeds up and love slows down. Reminds me of this text about a gentle or soft answer turning away wrath. So now I have a quote. Back to the well and all will be well. During my well days in the village, I had all these different friends. I learned Malay folklore from my Malay neighbor. I learned Tamil from my Tamil friend in the school. In fact, I learned how to say 1 to 10 because I was teaching him to say 1 to 10 in Chinese. He could learn it just like that, but how to learn 1 to 10 in Tamil. So I created a Tamil song of my own. How do I remember that after all these years, 60 years ago? Because I had a song. See, so I learned it. And it was fun. I mean, we were all multiracial, multi-religious, multilingual. Today I have a Hindi goddaughter. And I say to her, "Aap kaisa hai? Aapka naam kya hai?" So we learn it because it's fun. In my family, I have a daughter married to a Scottish. I have a nephew who married a Japanese. I have, a Korean daughter-in-law. Hey, we are one world. So for me, racism is completely illogical. And I get very upset about it because, but at the same time, like I said, I'm optimistic. I think Singapore is in a good place, just like you said. And we should be optimistic. We should be vigilant, but we should be optimistic. So let me talk about the common space together. We only have a very small space. This little red dot is 728.3 square kilometers. That is 640 times smaller than Malaysia. Can you imagine that? 460 times smaller than our nearest neighbor. Malaysia, we have about 10 people per square kilometers. In Singapore, it's 8,358 people. We are in a very small space. Cohen's experiment, remember some of you read about it, the rat experiment, when they put all the rats together in a small space, the rats multiplied and became very aggressive towards each other. That is the kind of situation we can be in if we are not very careful. We can become more aggressive because the space is small. And the mice became not nice to each other. And we can be like that. People in the open space countryside, in towns and villages, in bigger countries, apparently are known to be nicer than people in the same country living in large cities. So we are nothing except a city-state. We have no countryside. Implication, we have to be consciously aware of this squeeziness, compactness, and as Professor Hussin said, we got to learn how to be kinder to each other. Thank you for supporting the kindness movement. Because kindness movement is really about encouraging all of us to be more conscious of each other, more aware of each other, more respectful of each other, more conscious of us sharing a very tight common space. Whether it's in the lift or along the corridor, greet each other, be aware of each other, make life pleasant for each other. And I think we need to do more of that. And I think that will help. In fact, good neighborliness is a very important thing. We are living in very close quarters in our flats, and we need to know our neighbors. It's a good opportunity to know our neighbors. So we have this statement, neighbors by chance, friends by choice. I'd like to suggest that one of the things we need to do is to go back home and start to ask ourselves, how many neighbors do you know by name? How many neighbors do you talk to? How many neighbors do you know their children and actually gone on and actually built some kind of a relationship with them? I think when we do that, across all the races and religion, within our own neighborhood, it will help. It will be a great help. Second, common space to own. That's our common space, Singapore, and our neighborhood. And I grew up learning 3 national anthems. First, we have God Save the Queen, and then Negaraku, and then Majulah Singapura. Why did we not stay a colonial place, or did we not stay in Malaysia? Well, in a colonial era, it was a white supremacy. Somehow they're more superior than us. That's racism. We didn't like that. And in Malaysia, unfortunately, it was also a race-based politics that we didn't like. So why do we create Singapore? Why did Lee Kuan Yew and his cohort create Singapore? To become a multi-racial, a multicultural society. And we must guard that. One united people regardless of race and religion, and therefore we need to own it. That means one of the things we got to begin to own it is to say we will refuse to be bystanders. If we see racism in action, if we see jokes about our Sikh friends or Indian friends, our Muslim friends that are not right, we need to ban it. We need to tell our friends stop it. We need to speak up, and speak up firmly, and speak up vigorously. We should not be cowards. I like what Bryna said about safe space and a brave space. The brave space belongs to us to speak up and not be cowards. When I saw the video about these people, scolding, one guy was scolding another 2 Indians in Singapore, and people were just walking by, they did nothing. It made me very angry. Why don't people stop and say, hey, this is wrong? Why don't they come together and support, the one that's been victimized? We must stop that, and all of us can start doing that. We are not cowards, are we? So we must stand up and say, how dare you? Just like the time when we were living in the village. Anybody who pee into the well will be in trouble. We will speak up and say, how dare you? This is our lifeline. Multi-racism, racialism, multiculturalism, multi-ethnic society is our lifeline. We can't afford another riot. So speak up, my friends. Thirdly, there is a common space to share. We need to have an abundance mindset against a scarcity mindset. We have a wealth of things to share. For example, we have culture and language to share. We need to visit our cultural museums and our cultural institutions, visit each other's religious buildings, even participate and learn about the other religion. Why not? It's so enriching. It's so wealthy and so rich, this wealth of ours. Then there is economic wealth. Economic wealth is a function of strategy, is a function of opportunities and talent. But we cannot be a closed society. We cannot be a totally open society either. So the government needs to calibrate the ability to absorb and to assimilate. We also need to be more intentional in our attempt to help integrate our new people coming in here from the very beginning. I was living in Canada and US for 25 years, and half that time in Canada, I was a volunteer. I conducted a volunteer workshop for the police and new immigrants and the community leaders on race relations. Why do they do that from the very beginning? Because they believe that if you cannot get people to understand each other, you're going to have a hard time living together. So we are a responsible people, and singularly and collectively, we need to co-create a safe space together. Let me repeat what Myrna said a little bit. I think to me, the safe space is a space to dialogue responsibly, responsibly and respectfully. We need to have a safe space to choose interracial marriages of our choice, spouses of our choice. And I want to add one more thing. We need to choose, be able to be safe to choose a religion of our choice, and that people should be free to convert voluntarily in a safe space. And I think when we have all that in place, I think we'll have a better space to be more harmonious in our racial relationship. And what is the government's role? I think the government's role is to enable us and empower us to co-create this kind of space where we can own it, where we can live in it and work in it and play in it without regard to race and religion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Wan. I had the pleasure of running into Dr. Wan for the very first time when he came for a community function at Marine Parade, and he was introduced to ESM Go Chok Tong. I remember Go Chok Tong asking him, "What do you do?" And he said, "I hate the kindness movement." Then he started telling ESM a little bit about what he does. Then I remember the parting word before ESM started the function, I was saying, "Good, carry on." So I think with kindness comes understanding. And with better understanding, the transition from tolerance to acceptance, I think, will be a lot faster, a lot easier, a lot smoother. Thank you. Now, Ambassador Ong, for your final words.
Thank you. I think we should give more time to our listener out there and have them to ask questions, so I will be very brief. I thought about your second part of the topic for today, which is what more can we do? Number one, I think we should avoid just simply copying what other people are doing, what other countries' experience are, because Singapore is truly unique. So if you don't believe me, just look at your 10 fingers. Yeah, they're not the same. Number two, every 10 guys in Singapore, 7 fellows are Chinese, maybe 2 Malay, 1 others, including Indians. So you have to accept that there will be a certain degree of so-called privilege. Yeah? The problem for us is that we thought of ourselves and we think that we should be the dominant actor and everything must be revolving around what I, Ong Keng Yong, want. I have uncles who lost their job as a primary school teacher in a Chinese medium school. I have neighbors who lost their job in the old Nanyang University where it became NTU. I have now a neighbor who just had to retire because nobody wanted her to teach the way she taught Mandarin in school, English-speaking school. So if you tell the 7 Chinese guys in Singapore they have Chinese privilege, they think the world has turned upside down, right? But as what previous speaker has mentioned, Lee Kuan Yew had basically said, the way to bring Singapore to the next level or to have Singapore survive is that the majority must always take care of the minority. That's the way it is. Every country in the world, if you can give me an example of something contrary to what the reality is, everyone is conscious about race, about their color, about their culture, then I think we might have to think it again. But at the moment, no one can give me any good example. As Professor Hussin mentioned, humanity has always put race as a big deal, and there is always this concept of they are different. So I think we should avoid just simply following what the vocabulary or what the experiences of other countries, do it ourselves. We are, after all, a very small place, yeah? You know, we are only half the size of the city of London, yeah? City of London, the capital of the United Kingdom. We are only half the size of that city, and we proclaim ourselves to be an independent country, taken over from the British colonial days. Wow, this is a very daunting challenge. Number two, I think we have to consider what is a philosophy and what are the pathway or the methods to achieve the philosophy. Our philosophy is regardless of race, language, or religion. Yeah? So how to get there? If we just let our natural way of going about, I don't think we can be in this room, you know. Yeah? Here we are seeing our friend from Taoist Association. Taoist is mostly Chinese. Yeah? Although now we have French Taoists. I had to interact with them. And on top of that, most of them are ladies. Wow, you know, they questioned me about Taoism. I did not know much. I failed at the first question. Yeah. So therefore, we have to look at what is our philosophy. Our philosophy is multiracial society lah. Prof Hussin, don't go into multiculturalism and all that lah. Just simply multiracial society. How do we get there? Okay, we have all this CMIO lah, EIP lah, SAP school lah, and GRC. For those foreign friends here, these are a city of acronyms. Yeah. But really, we have to accept the differences, yeah, and try our best to distinguish the total objective and how to get there. The methods, the policy, all have to be taken into account as a total package. Lastly, we have to take into account really what is the alternative. Yeah. If we continue to say there is Chinese privilege, there is this kind of racism and all that thing, yeah, the other side will start to react. Yeah, anger, as Bryna said, will come into the fore, and no more logic. Yeah. I happen to believe that some of our policies in Singapore are actually very good, but time has changed, demography has changed. The educated population in Singapore has also gone almost 100%. Yeah, but my neighbor still only speak to me in Mandarin, even in the morning, 早安, and I said good morning. She said okay. So this is the way we are in, you know. Therefore, I think look into the logic of current policy and what is most important, lesson learned. 1964, as Professor Hussin said, 1969. And what happened is nothing in Singapore, it's across our country, our neighbors' issue. And then all of us got caught into it. So my conclusion is, yeah, just remember ACT. Avoid following other people. Yeah, consider the philosophy and the method. And T, take into account our history and what is the logic and alternative policy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, panelists. We have invited participants who came and joined us through Zoom to post questions if there is any, and also from the floor. I've got a number of questions that with me right now, and I would like to pose it to individuals where they actually identify some specific panelists to answer their question. But the rest of the panelists can jump in if you have anything more to say. I'll start with Ms. Bryna first, ladies. This individual asks, I'm curious to hear that a student from a SAP school fell in love with a non-Chinese boyfriend in university. Do you think with the increase in number of interracial couples and marriages in Singapore, maybe the future generations of Singaporeans will think less and less in terms of races, but look at others as just another human being, another fellow Singaporean?
Can I?
Yes, that's one way.
Firstly, thank you very much for the question. I think that when I met my then boyfriend, now husband, I did not see him in terms of like race, you know. I didn't look at him and say like, this guy is a Punjabi guy. Oh, okay. I didn't look at him and go, no, this guy is a Punjabi, or whatever his race is, you know. And I think to answer you, I feel that that change has already happened over the years. When I was dating him, I actually felt very self-conscious when we held hands, and I actually would feel that kind of like side eye being given to us when we were going out. But over the years, I feel that there, you know, that has become kind of like I mean, to see somebody with somebody that's of a different race, right? So to see interracial couples these days is really not even a thing anymore, you know? And I think that it's something that, you know, my parents had to understand, my husband's parents had to learn to understand. And I think that as time goes on, it may not be something that is so difficult to understand anymore. I think that those who've gone before us have it hard, right? I mean, and I also detail their experiences in my commentary when I talk about people who've had, you know, really difficult questions being thrown to them when they were dating. But I think that that has definitely improved. Yeah, so I think that hopefully with time, you are right, that people will not see relationships in terms of race or religion, but really will see it based on love and understanding and a chance to celebrate culture and diversity. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your response. This question is posed to Dr. Hussin Mutalib. A short, maybe a request for a short lesson in political science. The question is, you made a clear distinction between a state and a nation, and you concluded that Singapore is not yet a nation. Could you clarify this bold claim, please? What's the difference between a state and a nation? Ladies and gentlemen, I do apologize. You're going to get a short, precise lesson in political science.
This one is Kelong one, his student asking him.
Yeah, probably an assignment.
Okay, as brief as I can. I think if you're talking about a state, we are really referring to the physical elements of any given country. Geography, topography, population, economy, type of government, blah, blah. Physical. A state becomes a nation if they fulfill, to me, at least 3 important ingredients. One, the people combine together emotively and share commonality of values and the purposes of them living as citizens. The sharing, the togetherness, the soul is together. So instead of physical, is the soul, is the spirituality element of the population. That's one. Number 2, you have this strong sense of camaraderie, esprit de corps, say mutual solidarity, goodwill, all the good things shown by the people, whatever there is, together, you feel this. And finally, and fundamentally, again, reminded me of what we quoted and Ambassador Ong also reiterated, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew's dictum. The sentiment is the same. I do not want to quote Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, otherwise he will raise from the grave. But I'll summarize. When the people of different races and so on, when they decide to swim together, sing together. This togetherness, once you reach that level, you know you have transcended this basic level of statehood into nationhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Yes, please, Dr. Wan.
I fully agree. In fact, I think just like the human being, we have both the physical and the spiritual, the material and the intangible. I think there's great danger of any country, including ours, if it puts too much emphasis only on the material and neglect the spiritual or the intangible, the soul, as you describe it. I think then we would be less a nation. And that's why I think religiosity, values like kindness, compassion, and so on, these are intangibles. And I think we need to focus quite a bit on that as well.
Thank you, Dr. Wan. This leads to a question again. I'm going to address it to you. This particular individual asks, what are some of the challenges faced by the Singapore Kindness Movement with regards to its effort at fostering the kindness spirit in particular and interracial understanding and tolerance in general?
Kindness is like a big bottomless barrel. You can throw everything that is intangible, that is soulish, that is non-physical, non-material. And that's why we have so many touch points. The challenges are that sometimes you meet people, very few though, who are very cynical, and they really think that, why are you wasting time? Why do you need to promote kindness? If you're kind, you're kind. You're not kind, you're not kind. I think, why do you need to promote it, Well, it's like saying, why do we need to have education, and why do we need to teach people and remind people, about all the different, things. If you know, you know. If you don't know, you don't know. I mean, of course we know, but we also need to be reminded, because it's very easy for us to be sidetracked and distracted. So kindness movement remains, if you like, in your face from time to time, in your consciousness, because we need to remind all of us that we owe it to ourselves to have a softer, gentler spirit that will make our society, our nation, a better one. So challenges are not too many. In fact, I must tell you that in my work now, this is my 11th year, I meet a lot of wonderful people, kind people, like people in this room. We are here because we believe in those things. And so there are many more of us than less of us. And the same thing I would say, there are many more who believe in racial harmony than the rest. It's just that we don't speak up. So it's like kindness being locked inside us. We need to unlock it. We need to unlock it. We need to find a key. And it's different for everyone. Same thing with racial harmony. But there are people who believe in it, but they're not speaking up. So we need to challenge them. So that's our challenge.
Okay.
Thank you. That's a good question.
There's another question asked of similar tracks, and this one I'm going to pose to Prof Kirpal. This question will ask, what role does literature play in addressing tough questions like racial questions in particular? Questions which people are curious to know, but are unable to ask for fear of being called a racist. Being a minority within a minority, does the Sikh community faces the same pressure when other bigger minorities were targeted?
Thank you, whoever asked the question. I think it's a very important one. And let me begin by saying I just had the pleasure of reading a collection of poems by a lady called Atisha. Very interesting, and she says in it that she really has been caught in an entanglement, these are her words, in an entanglement of disconnected roots. All right, so here's a Singaporean putting her own dilemma forward, all right, that she has been a product of an entanglement of disconnected roots, R-O-O-T-S, right? Very interesting, because then she's a hybrid of sorts. But the hybrid is at the psychic level, not at the level of physicality. So that link is a very profound way of putting forward a very, very ancient dilemma. And that is, how do I equate with my body with the spirit around me? And that, I think, is very, very difficult, because she says, I have to find a way in which I can improve the identities that tread me to the ground. Now, this is very interesting, again, from a poem. I have to find a way to improve the identities that tread me to the ground. So those of us who say, in language, we normally say, you must be on solid ground, right? Here is a person responding to that to say that sometimes the solid ground that one person may envision may not be so solid for the other person. It might be very liquid. He or she may be drowning in that so-called solid ground. So this entanglement of disconnected roots is a powerful phrase with all the different metaphors that exist in it. And I think there's one very simple answer to it. Of course, our Ministry of Education, enlightened as it is, has been quite tactful in trying to avoid it. And that is really trying to introduce Singaporean literature as a mandatory subject, at least at the level of O levels, or what we may call secondary 4. Because, most nations around the world begin by studying their own literature, even our neighbors to the north now. In Malaysia, about 30 years ago, they introduced the notion that Malaysian literature must be primary. You study Malaysian literature, and then you can go on to Shakespeare and everything else. But we go to Shakespeare first, and then we come to Singapore literature, usually at the university, when our sensibilities are already quite formed and judgments are already quite in place. So I think, for me, the answer has been for the last, 45 years, that make Singaporean literature compulsory. And I think my former teacher, in some ways my guru, the one and only Edwin Tambu in Singapore, even though he disagreed with me at that point because he was eager to pacify the MOE, because he wanted to achieve some other goals, today would be more willing to say, yes, maybe it is time that we make our own literature compulsory. There's no point making Shakespeare compulsory. I mean, it's good, but I don't think that is the answer to national identity. National identities are not formed by glorifying the literatures of other nations. National identities are shaped and fostered by celebrating the literature that comes from your own people. So when I raised this with the former Minister for Community Development, the question was, we have Malay, we have Chinese, we have Tamil, we have Mandarin, you know. What do we do? So I said, with all due respect, sir, we also have English, right? And since LKY has said that though we have the 4 official languages and we have a national language, we can actually teach our own literatures also in translation. After all, you know, we learn Goethe, translation. We learn Sanskrit literature through translation. We learn Javanese literature that neighbors around Singapore produce, also in translation. In other words, it's not the action of it, it is the acceptance of it. Once you say, that is where I want to go, then you find a way. You may fly there, you may take a ship there, you may walk there, you may do a run there, you may cycle there. All right, the means are always a means to an end. Once the end is determined and agreed upon, then I think it's just a matter of finding the practicalities of actually getting that end realized and achieved.
Thank you, Prof. Ambassador Ong, this question is for you.
Okay.
As a representative of Singapore, you must have spoken well of Singapore's heterogeneous population and her racial harmony. The recent spat of unprovoked racist attack would tarnish Singapore's otherwise good image internationally. Just how urgent is the issue at hand, and what should be done to stop these attacks?
Well, it's urgent because somebody raised it, and there are incidents that have cropped up and now popularized through the social media. Yeah, and I don't know how many of you will believe me if I tell you that working for the civil service in Singapore, or in my case for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and serving in overseas posting, the issue of racial harmony, integration, working together as a nation, as defined by Professor Hussin, they are always with us. Wherever we are, I would dare say 24 hours as a foreign service officer, as a Singapore diplomat, we think about this. Because very often people will ask you, what's the difference between what you do in Singapore and what is happening in your neighboring country? Or now I was in Saudi Arabia for 4 years, and people ask me, what's so unique about your nation building? So these things keep coming. We have to constantly look at what we are doing and ask whether it's a good idea or not. Yeah, emphasizing English language, as Professor Kirpal just mentioned. And I remember as a child growing up, I asked my father, why all of us must go to English school? Nobody else in my family, extended family, did it this way. My father's 6 children all went to English school. On top of that, Christian missionary school. Yeah. Until today, none of us became Christian. Yeah. So my former pastor was always keeping in touch with me. He's still hoping. Yeah. And not because we have a particular religion. My parents are Buddhists and Taoists, and all of us, my sister and brothers, we are basically, quote unquote, free thinker. So my former pastor still harbor this hope that I will be his most valuable convert. Yeah, but you know, going forward, I think this is something that we have to always think about. I mentioned just now about the need for us to consider the philosophy and the method. Yeah. All these policies that we have are designed for one thing, to manage our multi-ethnic society. I don't think the guys in politics have this big ambition to create the Singapore brand. No, they are just interested in making sure that the politics don't blow up in their face. So what do? We got CMIO, Chinese, Malay, Indian, others. So they concoct all these management tools, so to speak, in the modern management language, to try to make sure that nothing blow up and nothing became so disruptive like what we have now, COVID-19. Yeah, the pandemic is really disruptive. We thought we got it fixed, and some people went KTV and night clubbing and everything blew up again. Yeah, so this is a problem we have. You never know when a simple thing like, I remember there was a big incident, somebody not happy with the neighbor cooking curry 24/7.
That's right.
And then I have to ask myself, what is the problem here? I was at the time working at the People's Association, and we have this thing called community mediation. No need to go lawyer, no need to go politician. Just get a few local people to get together and talk to each other. And the only problem is that the guy said he cannot stand the smell of the curry. Okay, so what do we do now? Do you ask the guy that cook curry, he can smell your Chinese cooking or what? Especially in the Chinese cooking, we have this thing called bamboo shoot. Yeah. We took the bamboo, the soft part of the bamboo and cook it. If you live next to a Myanmar neighbor, you will have it day and night, like my mother. Her neighbor is a Myanmar family, but Singaporean. Yeah. So I think, well, we just have to continue moving on this ideal and try to think of any good reasoning or logic to keep explaining. Don't give up, because that's the nature of this issue. We have to continue working on it. To quote my pastor, God has made us this way. So that's why we have job created for us. I say, okay. But Singaporeans and friends out there, don't feel despair. This is a part of our nation development we have to go through. Yeah? And the answer for all this, as I said just now, is to try to look at what we are. We are quite unique, quite different, and find solutions for our own society. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. We are spot on as far as time is concerned. I would like to thank each and every one of our panelists on stage, our audience in the Al Malik Faisal Hall, and also our audience on Zoom. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much to Dr. Isa Hussin and the distinguished panelists for a very constructive and at certain points quite critical. And I saw a lot of truth in the discussion, and as well as the spectrum of the years. I have a lot to look up on: the $10 note, the well, the pail. Oh, okay. Yeah, there's a lot that I need to go check on, and it's really nice. Thanks a lot for sharing, and a lot of thoughts that's provoked. And I also like what Dr. Hussin said, leave it to the young people, which was very encouraging. Thank you. Comes with a big responsibility as well. Ladies and gentlemen, please thank me, join me in thanking the moderator as well as the panelists, and also our guest of honor today, Mr. S Iswaran, Minister for Transport and Minister in charge of Trade Relations. Thanks, Minister, for gracing the seminar with your presence. Thank you everyone here for joining us at the Interracial Harmony Seminar, organized by Jamiyah Singapore with the support of People's Association. Ladies and gentlemen, indeed, we have all been affected by some recent negative incidents that showed racism in our country. It began to worry us and even made us question the direction of our racial harmony. But today's event is the testimony of our resilience and our community's strength to come together, discuss the issues, and counter the problems that threaten our social cohesion. It is this coming together of people from diverse backgrounds and experiences that protects our inter-ethnic relations and makes us truly Singapore. We started this morning by asking, what more should be done? Let us close by asking, how can each of us do something to strengthen our interracial relations at a personal level? Schools, in workplaces, in public places, what steps can you take from today onwards? This is me, Nazat Fahima, leaving you with this homework. So ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure being your MC. May peace be upon all of us and our nation. Thank you. Thank you so much.